Okay, hi everyone, Chef Megan here. So what I'm demoing for you all today is a roasted peach and heirloom tomato panzanella salad. So if you don't know what a panzanella salad is, that is technically a bread salad. It's really popular in Italian cuisine. So usually some sort of French, Italian loaf, maybe even baguette, tends to be one of the main components of your dish. And so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to cut it, get it into crouton sizes, and I will then go ahead and bake that off with just some olive oil, salt, pepper, and then I'll move on to roasting our peaches, our heirloom tomatoes. I'm just going to dice. They're beautiful on their own. There's not much that really needs to be done to it. And then I also have a specific variety of figs as well that I'm going to use. Really like those. They have beautiful outside color, and then when you slice them, they have this really nice bright pink color on the inside. So that's it's going to be very fresh, very summer type of dish. Okay. So I'm just going to go through. This is just a herbed rosemary loaf. And it really depends kind of on the size that you want. So you, sometimes people don't always like to use the ends because it's like super crusty. And sometimes people like to cut the panzanella smaller. I like it if it's in bigger sizes. Just because that gives it a little more substance. If these are going to be kind of smaller, you want to think about getting different textures and sizes when we're looking at our plate. So if this is bigger, I want that to kind of stand out. Maybe the tomatoes are cut a little smaller. My main reason for doing that. Okay. Also, too, if it is larger, because we are going to add a like lemon vinaigrette kind of dressing to this. We want to make sure that that bread still stands up. So it will get a little soggy, but we want to make sure there is still a crispness to the bread. So if it was really small, that obviously is not going to happen. It's going to be very soggy at the end. So if we slice it, if we cut them bigger, that is going to help us in the end achieve the final product that we're looking for. Another thing too that's a good idea, say if you're doing this for a large amount of people, say if that's the ideal size of the crouton that I'm looking for. I always like to go ahead and set that piece there. The reason I do that is so that way when I'm going through and I'm cutting, I'm always looking that that is my ideal piece. So that way, even if you needed to, you can kind of look, if you had it like that, you can kind of line up. Make sure that you get a similar thickness, because remember, if in terms of, we want to make sure that our cuts are uniform because things are going to cook then at the same temperature. So if this is how big this piece is, and say I have a piece that's that small, well, obviously that piece is going to be burnt before this one fully cooks. So it's really important that we do think of uniformity when doing our knife cuts. So that's all I'm going to do because a little's going to go a long way. Okay. So there I have my bread that's all cut up. I'm going to go ahead and then save this. So, you know, the best bread to be using for this, especially because I'm going to turn them into croutons, is day-old bread. Also, too, if you have bread that you could tell is staling a little too much and you're not going to use it, say, for like sliced bread for a sandwich, go ahead and go throw it in your freezer. I do that all the time with any sort of bread that I have left over. Throw it in the freezer. I can pull it out. I can turn it into croutons. I can dice it up. I can turn it into bread pudding. Or if I want a savory bread pudding, say for like a breakfast brunch dish, you can go ahead and utilize this. Because this one has the rosemary and olive oil flavor. Obviously, we're not going to make bread pudding with that. But you could totally use this as a base for, like I said, a brunch kind of savory bread pudding, as well as croutons. So this is a great way of saving money and making sure that you're utilizing all the product that you purchase, because we don't want to be wasting our product. So I'm going to save this off to the side. I'm going to use this another day for another purpose. So for this, you're just going to want to give it a nice coat of olive oil. I like to use olive oil because it has obviously a really nice olive flavor to it. Sometimes some people don't like to use it because it is very strongly flavored. Also, too, it is quite expensive, and it has a lower smoke point on it. So I like to use it though for this. I think it adds a lot of flavor to it. And then I'm going to use some salt and pepper as well to season this to make my croutons. Okay, so I have my oil, my salt and pepper in here. I'm just giving it a nice mix just to make sure that seasoning is evenly distributed on those croutons. Okay, I'm now going to go ahead and transfer this to a sheet pan. And you just want to make sure you get those nice and spread out so that way they bake evenly. Okay, if it's too crowded, it's going to steam. So you want to make sure there's enough space for that air to cruise around those croutons. Okay. This will go for probably about 7 minutes or so. You don't want it to be too done. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to go in and cut my peaches. I want to do this that way they can roast. They have enough time to do that because we want to make sure that we get some nice caramelization on these. Okay, so important thing to know about peaches. So these are stone fruits, also known as drupes. That's why we have this little pit there. And you have two different types. You have freestone and clingstone. As you can see, when I cut this, the peach separated really easily. This is a freestone. I could take that out and I could take the pit out. You have other ones that are clingstones, meaning that that flesh is going to cling to that pit. So you're going to have a harder time getting a nice clean cut on those. Although these peaches, they're perfect. This is going to be awesome for what we're going to do with it. Okay. Now, important to keep in mind, you have your croutons shaped a certain way, and you want to think, how am I going to cut these? You could do them in slices. You could, do you could do quarters, and that could look really nice. It all just kind of depends on what you're doing. For something that's going to be like a mixed salad, it's going to be nicer if I take those quarters and I go ahead and I cut them one more time. Okay. So these are going to be a little bit bigger. So it's going to be close to kind of the size of our crouton. Okay. So to roast these, I'm going to take these peaches. I'm going to toss them with some sugar. I'm going to use just regular granulated sugar. You could do brown sugar if you wanted to. Just keep in mind, brown sugar has molasses added to it, so that's going to give it a deeper, richer flavor. So it depends on what you want to do with it. I think just regular granulated sugar is going to be fine for what I'm looking for to do with it. You could also go ahead and use some honey if you wanted to as well. So I'm just going to give it a nice toss with that sugar and that honey just to make sure that all of that sugar has attached to those peaches. So that way they're going to caramelize really nicely. And I'm going to put them in the 350 oven that our croutons are going to come out of. Okay, so next I'm going to go ahead and cut up our heirloom tomatoes. These are some really nice ones I got from Specialty Produce the other day. So these are definitely different than, like, say, your normal tomatoes that you're going to find. The skin is usually not as thick. They have really beautiful, kind of nice, bold color to them. And the flavor on these are just amazing, okay? One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of times these tend to be a little softer. So you want to be just really careful with cutting them so that way that you don't squish them too much. Okay. So I'm going to go through and cut just one more time. Now these I'm going to leave more like quarters. But for heirloom tomatoes, you could find them be, bright red. They could almost have like this reddish kind of green tinge to them. They could be yellow. They could be fully green. So there's a lot of different variety. So important thing too, in terms of like mise en place and you're cutting, you want to work from the least messiest to the most messiest. So I started off with my baguette. That's easy. With my bread. That's easy to clean. I then moved on to my peaches. Now I'm here on my tomatoes. And obviously this is a little bit more of a dirty job. So it's important we usually go ahead and do yeah, usually tomatoes last, garlic last, onion last because of the either the mess that it's going to make, but also to um, the aromas, as well as this has a lot of acid. You're gonna want to go ahead and hone your blade after cutting a lot of tomatoes or lemon because they have a high acid content. If you ever have the chance, definitely when figs are in season, figs are great, and their season is so small that if you have your chance to if you have a chance to get some really nice figs from the height of their season, beautiful. They're amazing ingredients to work with.
Hello everybody. We are going to be making a really light, simple vinaigrette today for the panzanella salad that Chef Megan's working on. So for that, we're going to use a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. We don't want it too fruit forward. Extra virgin is, since I'm not using pomace olive oil, I'll cut it a little bit with some canola oil and do a blend, because olive oil on its own might be a little too strong for a vinaigrette. It will sweeten it with some honey. We'll give it the sour aspect with some lemon juice and zest. And vinaigrettes are made in ratios, so you don't really need a recipe. A traditional ratio is 3 parts of oil to 1 part of vinegar. It gives you a very oily dressing, but the acid level is right to where you can taste it and it's not too strong. A more modern vinaigrette is 2 parts of oil to 1 part of vinegar, so the acid level is higher, enough that it could make you cough if you were drinking it straight, but using a little bit of it on a salad gives you a good balance. So when somebody says, are you making a classic or a modern vinaigrette, they're talking about the ratio. Is it 2 parts of oil or 3 parts of oil to the 1 part of vinegar? So I'm going to make a more modern with a little less oil, 2 parts. So I'm going to do 1 part of my acid, and I'm going to do 2 parts of the oil. Now the only acid we have is the lemon juice. So what I'm going to do is zest it first and put that into my bowl for the flavor. And then I'll juice it, see how much juice I have, and that will determine how much oil. So we kind of work backwards that way. So you don't want to cut it a lemon and then juice it and try to zest it, of course. So first, get your zest. This isn't going to be a whole lot of dressing because we don't need a whole lot. So I'm just making very little. And this zester's taking off such small pieces, I don't need to chop it. I'm just going to zest it right into the bowl, but I could run my knife through it if I wanted to. So zest gives you the flavor of the lemon, the taste of lemon, but not the flavor of sour. So if you ever want something to have a lemony taste, but you don't want it to necessarily be sour, you can use the zest instead of the juice. We're going to use both. So in there I have about the zest of about a half a lemon. To get maximum juice, I give it a nice roll, push on it on the table. That way it's soft and broken up. Then I can run my knife down through. And so I don't get any seeds, I could use a piece of cheesecloth. And cheesecloth will allow me, instead of using a strainer, to juice this lemon. Sometimes we're doing things table side, like a Caesar salad. Instead, you can't have a juicer at the table. You'll just put a piece of cheesecloth behind it when you squeeze it, and you won't get any seeds. You can also use a reamer, which is a little wooden or glass or metal tool to get the juice out. Now I can measure it if I want to be very precise. I normally probably wouldn't. And we're looking at 2 ounces, so we probably need about maybe 6 ounces of oil. So I'll do about 3 and the rest in canola oil, so it's not too strong with extra virgin olive oil. And that's my oil part, my vinegar part. I'll add a little honey to that. So I have my sweet and my sour. Probably a tablespoon's worth. And the salt rounds it out and brings out the flavors. So you always want a little salt. I'm adding a pinch. I would probably say about maybe a 1/4 teaspoon. And fresh cracked pepper. If you don't have a pepper mill, you can grind up the pepper yourself by using your cutting board and a knife. You should be able to do everything with your knife. So if I put just a few of them on the cutting board, 3 or 4 across, and near the edge of the table, and I use my knife, I can press down with the knife being flat because on the edge and pull back. And cracked pepper. If I keep running my knife through it, I can make it finer and finer. This will taste way better in a simple vinaigrette than already ground pepper that's lost all of its essential oils. That might be fine on some things, but this is such a delicate and few ingredient dressing that fresh cracked pepper is what's going to make the difference. I don't want it too strong. I've ground way more than I probably need. So again, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon. Then my oil. I'll whisk in that honey mixed up. So my towel to hold my bowl. See, you have a semi-emulsified dressing there. It's a little peppery, but it'll be nice on that salad, I think. And there you go. Of course, you want to taste it. The best way to taste this now with a spoon, it's going to taste too strong. Taste it with the product you're going to eat it with. So that would be either the bread or the lettuce or whatever to get a good example of what it's going to taste like on the final product. Thank you.
Okay, so I went ahead, I added the vinaigrette that we made here to my panzanella salad. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start building it. So when it comes to plate up, since you are no longer cooking this product, it is important that you should be wearing gloves at that point because you are no longer going to be cooking the product that you're going to serve to customers. Also, too, you always want to make sure that you're cleaning your plate. You want to make sure that it looks really nice. That stuff's too long. I'm just going to remove that. So you want to make sure that you clean your plate. And one of the best ways to actually do that is if you have like a little piece of cheesecloth. And if you can have some distilled white vinegar, a little water, you wrap the cheesecloth and tie it with some butcher twine, it's like a little cylinder. That is the easiest way to go in there and clean up those plates. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some of my little micro fuchsia flowers. I like to use these flowers a lot because A, they have beautiful color, they stand out really nicely, but also too, they're one of the few micro flowers that actually hold up really well for a longer period of time. Plate's good. Perfect. Okay, so there is our roasted peach, heirloom tomato, panzanella salad with seasonal local figs, microgreens, and microfuchsias. Okay. I hope that you all enjoy, and we will see you all in class very soon. Thanks. Bye.